Title: The Bride Who Walked Away. Olivia stood at the back of the church, her fingers trembling as they brushed against the smooth fabric of her wedding gown. The air felt thick, suffocating almost, with 1,000 eyes on her. It was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, yet she felt nothing but a growing sense of dread. Her heart pounded in her chest, and her breath came in shallow, anxious bursts. This was it, the moment she had dreamed of since she was a little girl. The grand ceremony, the perfect gown, the man of her dreams waiting for her at the altar, or so she had thought. The soft hum of the organ filled the church, a gentle but persistent reminder of what was about to happen. Her bridesmaids stood by her side, their faces glowing with excitement, their smiles a little too wide, as if they couldn't wait for the celebration to begin. Olivia's mother beamed with pride in the front row, eyes glistening with tears. The entire world seemed to have come to a halt. But for Olivia, time seemed to be moving in slow motion. She turned her gaze toward the large wooden doors of the church, feeling a surge of panic. On the other side of those doors stood Daniel, waiting for her. He was everything she had ever wanted in a man. Tall, handsome, kind-hearted, and a man who had promised her forever. He had asked her to marry him, with so much love and sincerity that she had said yes without a second thought. Yet now, in this moment, standing in front of a full church, she wasn't sure. A knot tightened in her stomach as she thought of the man waiting for her. Daniel. He had always been there, supporting her, loving her, and yet something felt off. Was it the weight of the commitment, the pressure of making the biggest decision of her life? Or was it something deeper, something she couldn't quite put her finger on?
Olivia?
A voice called, breaking her thoughts. She turned to see her best friend Rachel standing next to her. Rachel's smile was filled with excitement, but there was a hint of concern in her eyes.
Are you okay?
Rachel asked softly, her hand resting on Olivia's arm. You look a little pale. Olivia forced a smile, trying to mask her unease.
I'm fine, just a little nervous.
Rachel studied her for a moment, then nodded, though Olivia could see the worry lingering in her eyes.
You know, if you need to talk, I'm here for you.
No judgment, no pressure, just
if you need someone to listen.
Olivia nodded, grateful for Rachel's support, but she couldn't bring herself to admit what was truly going on inside her.
How could she explain it?
How could she articulate the storm brewing in her chest, the way her heart seemed to be screaming at her to stop? She couldn't. Not now, not here. With everyone waiting for her to make the walk down the aisle, she took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. The doors opened and the church fell silent. It was time. Her heart raced as she stepped forward, her heels clicking softly on the marble floor. Every step felt heavier than the last, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. The aisle stretched out before her like a long, narrow tunnel. Daniel stood at the altar, his eyes locked on hers, a look of pure love and anticipation on his face. Her gaze met his, and for a brief moment, everything else faded away. But then, in that fleeting instant, the weight of her decision settled over her. A wave of realization washed over her. She couldn't do it. She couldn't go through with it. The man waiting at the altar wasn't the man she was meant to be with. The life they had built together, the plans they had made, none of it felt right. Her heart told her something she couldn't ignore. She needed to walk away. The life she was about to enter wasn't the one she wanted. She needed to stop it, right here, right now, before it was too late. The sound of her footsteps faltered as she came to a halt. The world around her seemed to blur, and her heart thundered in her chest. She could feel the eyes of every person in the room on her, but none of that mattered anymore. The only thing that mattered was the decision that had to be made. Without thinking, she turned, her white gown swirling around her as she fled down the aisle. The gasps of the guests and the shocked silence that followed barely registered. All Olivia could focus on was the overwhelming urge to get away, to escape the life she had been about to commit to. She pushed open the door to the church and ran into the cool air outside. Her breath came in ragged gasps, and she felt her heart racing in her chest, each beat a reminder of the life she had just walked away from. But in that moment, as the cold wind hit her face and she stood alone in the quiet, she knew it was the right decision. She had taken the first step toward finding herself, toward embracing her truth, no matter how difficult it might be. And yet, as she stood there in the silence, A part of her still ached for what she had left behind. Olivia ran, her feet pounding against the pavement, her heart a relentless drumbeat in her chest. She had no particular destination in mind, no plan for where to go. The only thing that mattered was that she needed to escape. Escape the pressure of the church, the expectations, the life she had been preparing for. Her breath came in short gasps, and she was vaguely aware of her gown dragging behind her, its voluminous train catching on the wind like a sail. She stumbled, the heels of her shoes catching on the uneven ground, but she didn't care. She had to keep moving, had to put distance between herself and the moment that had just shattered her world. Behind her, the church doors slammed shut, and she could almost hear the collective gasp of the guests who had witnessed her departure. She couldn't bear to think about it. The shame, the disappointment, the confusion in Daniel's eyes, the hurt that would surely follow. She felt a twinge of guilt as she turned a corner, but the wave of guilt was immediately overwhelmed by an even stronger emotion, relief. A strange sense of freedom flooded her, and she allowed herself to pause to catch her breath. She was alone now, alone with the truth. Olivia leaned against a nearby wall, taking in the cool evening air. The city was quiet, as if the world was holding its breath for her. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the silence wash over her. And in that brief moment, she wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. But the question lingered only for a heartbeat. Deep down, she knew that what she had just done was what she had needed to do for herself, even if it hurt everyone else. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, and she pulled it out, her hands shaking slightly as she unlocked the screen. The screen lit up with a flood of notifications, messages from her parents, her friends, her bridesmaids, and then the message that caught her eye, Daniel. His message was short, simple, and gut-wrenching. "Where are you? What's happening? Please, Olivia, talk to me." She stared at the message, feeling a mix of emotions, regret, sorrow, guilt, but also an overwhelming sense of clarity. This was the right thing. She couldn't ignore it any longer. She knew she had to respond, but she couldn't find the words. So instead of replying, she turned off her phone and slipped it back into her pocket. For the first time in what felt like forever, she was going to be completely alone. No one's expectations, no one's demands, just her. Olivia glanced around, the city streets now feeling like a foreign landscape, alien and unknown. It was then that she realized she had no idea where she was going. She hadn't thought that far ahead. The only thing she had in mind was to put as much distance as possible between herself and the life she was supposed to be stepping into. Without thinking, she started walking. It didn't matter where. It didn't matter why. She just walked. As Olivia wandered through the city, the streets seemed to mirror the chaos in her mind. She passed familiar landmarks, the bakery where she had bought her favorite, pastries as a child, the park where she and Daniel had gone on their first date. Each corner she turned only seemed to deepen the ache in her chest. Every step was a reminder of what she had just left behind, what she had walked away from. Her mind kept replaying the scenes from the church, the look of disbelief in Daniel's eyes as she turned and fled, the silence that had followed her departure. She could still hear the faint echoes of the church organ in her ears, the soft whisper of the guests murmuring in confusion. She imagined what it must have been like for Daniel to stand there, waiting for her, only to watch her walk away. She had thought it would be easier, that once she made the decision, everything would fall into place. But now, in the quiet of the streets, she felt a sense of emptiness that she hadn't anticipated. The wind picked up, tugging at her hair, and Olivia pulled her coat tighter around her shoulders. She hadn't prepared for this, hadn't prepared for the cold, the loneliness, the questions that were already bubbling up in her mind. What had happened? For months, her relationship with Daniel had seemed perfect. He was everything she had ever wanted. He was kind, successful, loving, and supportive. Everyone around her had seen how great they were together. But as the wedding day drew nearer, the doubts had started creeping in. Small, almost insignificant doubts at first, like the way Daniel always seemed to be working late or how they hadn't gone on a proper date in weeks. But over time, the doubts had grown. The more she thought about it, the more she realized she had been living in a fantasy. She had been so focused on the wedding, on the perfect day, that she hadn't stopped to think about. Whether she was ready to spend the rest of her life with Daniel. Could she really commit to this? The deeper she dug into those thoughts, the more she started to uncover. Daniel wasn't the problem, she was. She had been running from herself for so long that she had never given herself the space to truly reflect on what she wanted. Olivia found herself standing in front of a small cafe. The warm glow from the inside beckoned her, and she hesitated for a moment before pushing the door open. As she entered, the warmth of the cafe wrapped around her like a blanket, and the smell of fresh coffee and baked goods filled her senses. She made her way to the counter, her mind still swirling with the events of the day. The barista smiled at her as she ordered a coffee and a slice of cake, her hands still shaking slightly. Sitting at a small table by the window, Olivia took a sip of her coffee and let out a deep breath. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to center herself. What now? She didn't have an answer. All she knew was that she had walked away from a life she had thought she wanted, and now she was alone, completely alone. And maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what she needed. The next few days felt like a blur. Olivia had managed to find a small apartment in the city, a quiet, unassuming place far from the familiar faces of friends and family. The apartment was modest, just a one-bedroom unit with peeling, wallpaper, and a small kitchen that smelled faintly of mildew. But to Olivia, it was a sanctuary, a place where she could breathe, think, and escape the chaos that had consumed her life. She sat on the edge of her bed, her hands clasped tightly together. The events of the wedding day were still fresh in her mind, replaying over and over like a film she couldn't turn off. She had walked away. She had left Daniel at the altar, and there was no going back. It wasn't just the ceremony she had abandoned. It was the life they had built together, the house they were supposed to move into, the future they had dreamed of, all of it, gone in a single desperate moment of clarity. But despite the overwhelming guilt, despite the ache in her chest, there was also a sense of relief, a strange, bittersweet relief that she couldn't quite explain. For the first time in what felt like forever, Olivia didn't feel suffocated by the weight of expectations. She could breathe. Yet that relief was short-lived. Her phone buzzed again, breaking her train of thought. This time it was a call from her mother. Olivia hesitated for a moment, her heart heavy with dread. But she knew she couldn't avoid it forever. She took a deep breath and answered. "Olivia." Her mother's voice was tight, controlled, but the worry was unmistakable. "Where are you? We've been trying to reach you. Your father's been asking. Everyone's asking." Olivia could hear the tension in her mother's voice, the underlying anger that was trying to stay hidden beneath the surface. Her heart sank. She had known this moment would come. She couldn't just disappear, not without facing the fallout of her actions. "I'm fine, Mom," Olivia said softly, her voice breaking slightly. The whole town is talking about it. They all think you're crazy." "I'm not crazy," Olivia said, her voice rising despite herself. I couldn't do it. I couldn't marry him because it wasn't right, and I can't stay here pretending everything is fine when it's not." Her mother's silence was deafening. Finally, she spoke, her tone softer now, but still filled with disappointment.